All right, everyone, it's time for today's live stream. Let's make sure that we're actually live over on Rumble. Is that actually the case? We shall see. I think that we probably are. Got my audio muted just in case here. I do see that chat is working. Moskvich2141. Hello, fellow clankers. Russ Hanneman says clank. Maud Dib says morning, clankers, and Armgeddem. Morning from hot and sunny South Carolina. Yes, indeed. Probably hotter than here. The heat wave finally broke. I'm very, very happy about that. By the way, there is a link in the description cross-platform to the continuing bidding on the little stickmen, of course. They come with a certificate of authenticity. People are bidding on them. One has been cycled back in, serial number 003. Apparently, there was a non-payment by the buyer, so that one is re-available now. So there is one on there that is currently at 99 cents. You can bid accordingly if you want. By the way, the link is also at the top of chat, pinned if you happen to be watching on YouTube. I will reiterate that later. We got a lot to talk about today. We've got a twofer, a double doozy, a double doozy with Ron DeSantis taking the L. One is a quote post by a supporter of his, but the other one, it has to do with a criminal justice reform bill that he vetoed. I talked about it this morning. I'm still mystified as to why he thought this was a good idea for any strategic purpose. We'll be talking about both of those. We'll be talking as well about Joe Biden apparently using CPAP for sleep apnea, the ramifications of that. There are significances, but most of them are being hyperbolically analyzed by people because, of course, CPAP is used by millions of people in the United States, but in his particular instance, it could point towards something that's more sinister. So we'll be getting into that. And also, no love for bumblebees. We're going to cover some science news today. I happen to like bumblebees, but apparently, honeybees. But apparently, honeybees and bumblebees as well are catching some flack as opposed to other pollinators. It's very, very sad to see. We'll be talking about Robert Reich's paranoia as well. And by the way, it is some severe paranoia, some severe hypocrisy, but it's Robert Reich. So, what the fuck? Do you expect anything else from him? We'll be talking about all of this and much, much more. Not a banned account in Netherlands. Is it legal to own precious metals? Yeah, you can own gold and silver here. And a follow-up, next reserve currency, gold, silver, Bitcoin, or caps? Probably caps at the rate that we're going at this point. Bottle caps, grab some Nuka-Cola, of course. We'll be talking about all sorts of bullshit. There's much more to cover as well. Just a second here. I'm going to make sure. Is this tab even working? Yeah. Okay, those tabs are working. I've always got to check beforehand. Let's make sure we're actually live, though. For some reason, it's not doing the autoplay thing today on Rumble. Yeah, we're live on Rumble. Hello, everybody. We've got lots and lots to talk about. No problems here. First and foremost, we're going to be talking about HB 605, which I talked about this morning. This is a massive L for DeSantis. I don't know how much it impacts him, like in the sense of polling, but as far as his overall credibility and not wanting to look like a neocon, I don't see good things on the horizon for him. Let me talk about the bill first and foremost and the nuance of how it was actually proposed and passed overwhelmingly and his veto of it. HB 605 is a Florida bill. It was a House bill. It was proposed there. Number one by a fan of DeSantis, an explicit endorsee of Ron DeSantis. This individual is supporting DeSantis for the presidency in the Republican nomination struggle. Secondly, of course, naturally, it's a Republican. Now, the House in Florida is largely Republican. The Senate is largely Republican. Their governor, who had to have another bill proposed and sent through just so he could run for the presidency, actually is a Republican. This bill has been vetoed by Ron DeSantis. Now, what does the bill do? And how did it get to the gubernatorial desk? It was passed overwhelmingly by the House. Now, only 2 people voted against it. It was passed unanimously by the Florida State Senate. So there were Democrat, Republican, Independent, it doesn't matter. Literally everybody voted for it. Ron DeSantis decided to veto it, a veto which, by the way, will be overridden. Now, the original creator of the bill is David Smith is now threatening to relinquish his endorsement of Ron DeSantis. I think he's had enough, because this isn't the first time it's happened. There was another bill that was similar a couple of years ago that would have allowed the expunging of records related to juvenile offenses of a non-violent felony nature. And the original version of the bill, DeSantis vetoed that as well. Now, what does the bill do? The bill allows the expunging of criminal records involved with investigations that did not lead to arrest, arrests that did not lead to charges filed, charges that were then dropped, or a not guilty verdict by a jury. So these are people who have either been found not guilty by a jury of their peers, or were never even charged or tried in the first place. So the trial was thrown out. There wasn't even enough evidence to convict. There wasn't even enough evidence to further investigate and arrest or detain the person. These are the people that we're talking about. The thing is, if you are arrested in the United States, there is a record of that. It does not matter whether charges are actually brought against you at all. They can detain you, so they put you in cuffs and they lead you away, question you, etc. And they never bring charges. The cops, the prosecution never brings charges. If you don't have enough evidence to even bring the charges in the first place, I would argue that in any sane situation, the records should be expunged, because otherwise there's an arrest record there that's potentially searchable under certain legal formalities and could prejudice, by the way, prosecution in the future. Well, this dude's been arrested twice in his life. He's a repeat offender. Yeah, he was found not guilty on the first charge, and the charges were dropped on the second one. But, you know, that indicates a pattern of behavior, even though there's no evidence of that pattern of behavior. Ron DeSantis has vetoed this bill. I've struggled all day to grapple with this, because Ron DeSantis is not stupid. That much is clear. He's shrewd. Why would a person who is not completely goddamn ignorant go down this route? Now, the standard logic is he's trying to move to the right of Trump on crime. Okay, that's all well and good. Trump supposedly soft on crime because of the First Steps Act, which I think DeSantis has taken to calling the Jailbreak Act, it doesn't really comport to reality in any meaningful sense, but we'll get past that because it is separate. If you're going to move to the right of Donald Trump to try to gobble up the right-wing vote within the GOP and hope to outright wing him, wouldn't it make more sense to do it on something in which the GOP would actually agree with you on? Right now, by and large, a significant proportion of the GOP electorate believes that the justice system from the top down is screwy. And they're not wrong, by the way. Oddly enough, they agree with liberals prior to the 2021 period on this token. Yes, there is a dual legal system in the United States. Absolutely. There always has been. There always will be, by the way. There's nothing that you can do to fix it. This is why I'm a libertarian. I believe in reducing the ability of government to destroy people's lives, because it will inevitably attempt to do so, because there will always be human corruption. Wouldn't it make more sense to go gung-ho for guns? That would be a winning ticket. So DeSantis comes out and says, you know, I know I was called Red Flag Ron, but I've changed my mind. I'm no longer for them. In fact, I think we should fuck the NFA. We should get rid of the ATF. That would be a winning issue. Tax reform. Hey, whatever Donald Trump promises you, I'll lower your taxes by 10 more points on top of whatever the fuck proposal he makes. Well, you're undercutting him. That would be wise. In fact, I would like more tax reform. The government can definitely make do with less. No. What issue does he choose? The most contentious, the one on which he's least likely to gain any points in the polling aggregator as a result of going far right on. By the way, can I please ask people something? Ron DeSantis appears to be insinuating that it's a conservative value to maintain a permanent record of somebody even when charges were dropped or a jury found them not guilty. What's the fucking point? I only saw one person that responded to me. When I asked earlier, I asked explicitly, DeSantis fans, please explain how you can possibly defend this. And one of them said, well, you know, there's some child molesters get away with it. Okay, firstly, think of the children fallacy. So out of hand, I'm calling bullshit on the claim. Secondly, what proportion out of 100 crimes for which a person is charged but they're found not guilty, the charges are dropped, they're detained but they're never fully arrested, or something like that, which would be pertinent to this bill? Again, a wide sweeping bipartisan bill suggested by a fellow Republican who at least formerly supported Ron DeSantis. What proportion has to do with kids being victimized? 1 or 2 of them, maybe 3. No, most of them are going to be burglary, maybe an arson, some a simple assault, something like that. So if the person, if there's no evidence of the crime, the person wasn't even able to be charged in many of these cases. They were detained, questioned, let go of, and no charges ever even happened. Why the hell does there need to be a paper trail to them for the rest of their godforsaken lives? That would prejudice individuals, possibly employers, certainly prejudice the prosecutorial system. No matter what state they go to, it's still there. If you don't have the evidence, there's no reason for there to be a permanent record of the person even having been arrested. Basically, it's an admission of the police's failure. Well, yeah, we arrested this person and we detained them for 72 hours and questioned them and shit like that, but we couldn't find evidence that there was ever any wrongdoing for which we retroactively could even justify the detainment in the first place. If anything, they should be more sparing in that usage, and we should probably have reparations given to people who are wrongfully detained, because it seems to happen an awful lot for political reasons lately. The Proud Boys. Anyway, again, I'm going to try to ask here on the live stream the same thing that I asked earlier, and I really would like an answer. Can anyone who stood, and I know that some of you support Ron DeSantis, you either say, well, I prefer DeSantis, but Trump is okay, or you say Trump can't win, I prefer DeSantis there, or you say Trump is an evildoer, he's a piece of shit, I'm riding with Ron. Okay, wonderful, that's fine. I'm not even going to bother trying to change your mind at this point. Can you justify his veto of HB 605, which will pass without his signature anyway? Is there any auspice other than think of the children under which you can possibly defend this action? Because I'm drawing a complete blank. And that makes me worry. I'm worried for Ron DeSantis' sanity, mostly. Because it's so nonsensical. I mean, you're not getting any brownie points on the federal level, so like with your presidential run. You're alienating elements of your own party that voted near unanimously in both the House and literally unanimously in the Senate for this bill, effectively obstructing your own legislative body for absolutely no reason. You know it'll still pass without your signature, so you haven't stopped anything. The people, the constituents support it, so you're alienating some of them. If anything, Ron DeSantis, at this point, in my opinion, if he were to become the nominee, he would lose. I do not believe that Ron DeSantis could possibly win in a general election. He's making too many fucking mistakes. Even if I liked everything that he stood for, he's still made too many goddamn mistakes, alienating MAGA being a part of that at this point. How does it, Daniel wrote, it doesn't endanger cops to not know that information. That is such a bootlicker position. Exactly. Why would it endanger cops? You're talking mainly about nonviolent crimes here. You're talking about the expunging of a record of a person who may have done something as simple as petty larceny, but a charge was brought and they were found not guilty of petty larceny. They burglarized a home, no weapon or anything like that. They just broke it, trespassing or something. But they were never even charged because there wasn't enough evidence to show it was even them that was there. Why the hell should they be saddled for the rest of their life with a quasi-criminal record? I mean, you haven't convicted them of anything. They haven't been sentenced, sent to jail or anything, but they've still got that arrest. They've still, the warrant is still there by which they were arrested or whatever. And you weren't even able to cobble together enough evidence to get a jury to find them guilty at the penultimate form. Why should they have that record around? I have absolutely no clue what DeSantis is even trying to do with this one. I mean, I'm struggling. I just can't think of how this is a net positive for Ron DeSantis. And this is really my big problem with him. In a lot of these moves that he's making, it's just dumb. And a dumb person is probably not going to win the general election. You're going to have more tact than that. Suck duck. To spot the uniparty, check for dual citizenship. Mungie Sticks, which fits better, Ron Bush or George W. DeSantis? I just call him Ron myself, you know. Ramblin' Ron, I suppose. Short boy, sort of like Marco Rubio. Huns with guns. He vetoed it because it didn't benefit Israel. Yeah, I don't think that was the reason this time. That was the reason for HB 269, actually, which he signed in Tel Aviv, quite literally, wearing the beanie cap. Interesting. He's America first. Ashley, I really don't even know what Ron is aiming for. At this point, I don't know either. I think that he needs to fire, at the very least, he needs to fire his advisors because they're advising him wrong. Ron is wrong in this particular sense. His advisors are, I mean, it's like Kung Pao enter the fist. We've been teaching him wrong as a joke, with Wimplo, and never mind, only 2 of you get the reference, but we have purposely trained him wrong as a joke. Testing 2741. If it blocks cops from seeing arrests, it endangers cops, and arrests are relevant in a trial. If it only hides employers, I support it. Not a DeSantis fan. Again, it doesn't endanger cops when you're not generally talking about violent crimes at all. A person who has committed mere trespass or petty larceny is no more likely to be involved in anything violent towards an officer than a general member of the public who has no arrest record. It doesn't need to be on record. We expunge juvenile records, well, including, at least the more minor violent offenses. Why wouldn't we expunge it for some 19-year-old? They got caught up with a gang or something, and they sold a little crack, and they got charged, but the charges were dropped because they couldn't prove they sold the crack. Why should they have their lives ruined? Be profiled by the cops all the time. Opinionated junkie, AJW and neocons say tough on crime works, but don't have a long-term solution. Sure, crime goes down, but when it is less effective, they have no answer. True. I believe in being tough on actual crime. So, kitty diddler, serial rapist, murderer, something like that. Somebody who's actually a criminal who victimizes other people. Half the crimes that are listed on the book shouldn't even be considered crimes. They should be decriminalized entirely. A lot of the others are very minor. They shouldn't come with jail time. They should come with something that generates revenue, like, hey, community service, restitution, something like that. In some cases, you're talking about the petty larceny. Okay. Does the person really need to gobble up taxpayer resources for 3 months in a county jail? Or should they just have to scrub graffiti for a few months? I would rather them scrub the fucking graffiti. Let's improve society instead of draining the coffers dry, leeching off of the taxpaying public, while throwing excessive sentences that stick with the person for the rest of their lives, denying them the ability of even improving themselves. Once a person's gone to jail once, they are much more likely statistically to go there again. Why? You've robbed them of the capability of rehabilitating, and that's not even what the prison system's for. There are some people that are beyond rehabilitating. Again, serial rapist, mass murder or something. That is a drop in the bucket of all the crimes that are committed. Most crimes that are committed are not violent anyway. Alden the Blue, DeSantis, I'm bleeding, making me the victor. Yeah, I get the reference. My nipples look like milk duds. Dave Laro, wrong, DeSantis. I've got some yellow liquid for your popcorn, and it's non-dairy. Don't make me do Kung Pao references all day now. I'll laugh too hard. I like the cut scene there where the I don't know what his name is, the old wizened dude was on the electric generating bike laughing his ass off and electrocuting the chosen one's nipples. That was a funny scene. I watched that as much as I watched the whole movie. Mopey Hornet, hey Sticks, with July 4th around the corner, are you able to buy some fireworks there? Yeah, fireworks are very prevalent here. In fact, there was a major disaster some years ago in Enschede, the city that we're in, where a fireworks factory blew up, cratering several acres of land and I believe killing, unfortunately, a large number of people. I don't have any footage of it other than the smoke billowing up out of what used to be the fireworks factory, but it was it destroyed several blocks of land around it. It was an enormous explosion. Cole Ross, Kung Pao Enter the Fist is a fantastic movie. Yes, and very underrated. It only got reasonably good scores with the audience, and the critics hated it. And I'm like, the fuck are you talking about? It's one of the funniest things I've seen in my life. Just ask Yoke Nick. Testing 2741. Violent charges dropped by woke DA equals relevant to cop. Okay, but in the preponderance of things, how many instances of woke DAs, especially in a state like Florida, letting people go on legit charges exist compared to the number of people who beat the charges? They didn't get charged. They only got arrested and detained for a while, or they were found not guilty. What's the preponderance? It's probably 99-1. In that case, I would rather those 99 people not be further inconvenienced by an authoritarian system and just hope that the crazed Antifa member ends up getting caught out later. And by the way, in this case, it wouldn't matter. The woke DA can always just deny charges being brought in the first place. So yeah, you've got an arrest, but you don't have anything more beefy than that. So, the Antifa member doesn't need a job because they're basement dwellers. Cole Ross, now betting Mike Piazza. I remember that too. I could probably go through that movie pretty much line by line. The same is true of several other movies like Brotherhood of the Wolf. Awesome Diesel. Good Australian evening, Mr. Hammer 666. I will clank my Woodstock bourbon and Coke glass bottle. The Grizzly 617. Did you see those mask marks on Joe Biden's face? Tim Pool thinks it's an oxygen mask. It's a CPAP mask, yes. How is it that we've fallen to the point of letting a man at this point in his health run for office? We will be getting to Joe Biden's CPAC, or supposedly CPAP anyway. Bobby Walter, wisely invest this on the crack and hoe fund, or you can waste it on your family funds. $20 at this point wouldn't buy a whole lot of crack with Bidenflation. Just ask Hunter. Why do you think he just had his child support reduced to $5K a month from $20K? Hard times for the Biden family. I'm very sad for them. E100 Omega 123. Biden is bragging about how many jobs he's made. Inflation means everyone is making less. He didn't create employment. He created a serf class. Yes, and keep in mind, some millions of those created jobs are second jobs. They didn't affect unemployment now, did they? Because the person was already employed. Next news story, also related to DeSantis. This is from Melissa Blazek. She is a big-time DeSantis fan, it seems. Standing room only, and please, if you only take one of the links in the description, other than maybe the Stickman one, because again, one of the older Stickmen cycles back through at 99 cents, although it's probably higher literally now. Please take this link, and we're going to be talking about this image and the claim. Standing room only at the packed DeSantis event, yet Newsmax reports it was a small crowd. Now, let's use our brains. We're putting on our thinking caps. What do you see here that shows us that this is indeed a small crowd? I'll give you 10 seconds. I'm going to let other people answer first. What do you see in this particular picture that shows you that this is indeed a small crowd and this is a carefully cropped photograph? I'm monitoring chat at the moment. I'm very interested in if other people see what I see in this image. It took architectural drawing for a while. Maybe that helps me. TikTok. Do 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 da na 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 na. Let's see. I'm not seeing anyone answering. You've lost Jeopardy. Here's what I see. Yeah, room size, all fane. Yes, and how can we tell? Look at the ribbon on the ceiling. Double pleated. You can see one corner goes to a center. In the middle of the room, presumptively. What do you see closer to the image? You see one half of the other. If I split this room into 4 quarters, which I can do literally based on the ribbon on the ceiling, probably the windows and supports on the ceiling as well, I would estimate a crowd size of 200, maybe 250 people. We've got to assume that there's an area that DeSantis is standing there with his staffers and aides and so forth, maybe his fucking lawyer. This crowd cannot be much larger than 250, maybe 300. That would be pushing it, that you crammed into this room. And of course, some people will go for just the spectacle. It's like there are people that'll go to a Trump rally. They're not hardcore Trump fans. This is not a large gathering of people. We know this based just on the goddamn room design. We can look at the fucking ceiling and see roughly how big this room is. If you look at this photo, you're looking at about 4 rows of people on 3 sides, probably not on the 4th. We don't know if there might have been a row behind that. We can look at roughly how many people in 1/8 of the room are, and we can just multiply. That's all we have to do. It doesn't matter if it's standing room only. And by the way, I do notice that a number of these people do actually appear to be seated. Now, there may have been a few people outside. That's entirely possible. Okay, we'll be very, very generous with Ron DeSantis. You pulled 500 people at an event in New Hampshire. Wowie kazowie, how wonderful is that? Donald Trump calls that going to the goddamn bathroom. And so I'm seeing just a huge amount of cope. Standing room only at the packed DeSantis event. Yes, I could probably get standing room only at an event too. If I were to gather clankers together, if I were to go to Manhattan or something and announce the day beforehand, hey, I'm having lunch in my bedroom. You can come and join me in my bedroom. Yeah, I could probably have standing room only because I could get 20 people together. This does not show in any way, shape, or form. How does this fucking goddamn show popularity in any meaningful sense? Again, another huge. Now, I realize that this isn't Ron DeSantis actually putting it out. This isn't a campaign member or anything like that. But, by God, how is this a win for Ron DeSantis? Okay, you got, if we're being exceptionally generous, 400 or 500 people together, I estimate 250 more likely. Well, that's very, very wonderful. It's better than Chelsea Clinton in a broom closet. She had 12 people in there. It's better than the average Biden showing in the 2020 election. Sometimes he had a couple of dozen people and half of them were hecklers. Do you remember when Joe Biden was supposedly barnstorming in the Midwest out there in them cornfields that he's so used to? And they would have like pickup trucks, honking their horns and rolling coal while he was trying to speak to the 20 people that were gathered there outside of some fucking nondescript barn in the middle of nowhere in like Wyoming or Iowa or something, which was, 80 million votes, my ass, dude. Anyway, DeSantis, at the very least, will give him credit. He is capable of generating a crowd. It's just that it's underwhelming. And by the way, there are a couple of chairs in that photo that do not appear to be occupied. So it's not standing room only. You can sit down. You just decided, hey, my legs are tired from all this driving. I drove 5 hours to see Ron DeSantis speak. I'm just going to stand here in the corner and shake my legs out a little bit. By the way, Snowflake's Nightmare, link in the description. It is the second link there with the Twitter post by Melissa Blasik, or Blasik. The Patriot Cairo, I support capital executions. I don't. I know you don't, due to a government power over it. I have no problem with it. Why let child rapists and murderers live? It's the only right action for the victims' families. I think letting them rot and suffer in prison without any hope of ever getting out is a more fitting punishment than basically doing that in 9/10 of cases anyway, but with the possibility they get killed 30 years later due to bureaucracy. Now, if you want to have vigilante justice, I can't officially support that, but that's okay. That's not a state power. Putin forever. Hi, Sticks. Any plans to have more children? Sorry if this is too personal. If you have a son, you get to have to call him Jimmy. Have a great summer. No, Jimmy would be off the list. I'm not going to bother to, no offense, but I'm not going to talk about that. That's more of a personal issue. We have a daughter. 487 Sean Tower. I'd like to see more investigations in Susan Rice and her running of the White House and her very close connection to Obama. Obama and Rice believe they can elect a dead man. They might be right. Yeah, everyone should be investigated from the Uniparty. But then they'd be investigating themselves. That's the problem. Pigar, greetings from the Meatball Militia in Davie, Florida. Hashtag Clank Nation. Meatball Militia. You mean you're a Ron DeSantis fan? Ha, ha, ha. Pizza Wolf, I'm occupying at least 3 of those Biden-created jobs. Still not enough bodies to rebuild that crumbling infrastructure. Where'd the money go? Mostly into the pockets of his donors. His donor class buddies. King of Biltong, good morning from Antons in Roanoke, Texas. Rumble needs to improve the process used to make rants and access live podcasts. Anyway, hashtag Clank Nation. I believe the quartering has just defected permanently to Rumble and is currently raising issue with a few of the app's ins and outs on there. But I mean, I can't vouch for it because I've never used the app. I only use the desktop experience. Alarian Horizon, DeSantis influencers are mega cringe, total soy. Some of them. I don't dislike the creators that even some of the Biden fronting creators. I'll still watch some of their content because I like a broad plethora of political opinion. That being said, some of the claims that are made are patently false. Ron DeSantis is really screwed up. He's not ahead in polling, although I keep seeing that echoed for some reason. Next news story, we'll talk about the CPAP mask. Face indentations force White House to disclose Biden has serious medical condition and uses CPAP machine for sleep apnea. Now, sleep apnea can be serious. It can also lead, it's linked to cognitive decline, which is why in his particular case, it's more important than the average case. We're not sure, did Biden just begin using CPAP? Or has he been using it for some time and just in this particular instance, the indentations were still there? Maybe he's retaining water. Have we thought about the fact that he might have organ failure of some sort, that he's retaining water And then that is a thing. It used to be called dropsy back in the 19th century. Now, of course, retaining water is the more politically correct definition. Means the same thing. That is, number one, possible, which would mean bad things medically. Sleep apnea, though, if we assume that it's just, okay, he went in, he's like, hey, doc, you know, I'm not sleeping as well, feel exhausted in the morning, which lines up with his behavior. And he said, oh, well, you have sleep apnea. And he's going to use CPAP, so you'll get oxygen at night so that you feel better, you sleep better. It doesn't necessitate that it is a major problem. The problem is that if he suffered from sleep apnea prior and simply just went into the doctor recently, so he got his CPAP now, that could be a contributing factor into the cognitive decline we have already seen. And we have seen cognitive decline with Joe Biden. Since he's gotten into office, he's gone from a little befuddled, a little confused, a little bit tipsy, a little bit clumsy to on a weekly basis or thereabouts. It was every other month or so at first. Now it's basically every week. He trails off and forgets what he's saying. He misuses words in a word salad and doesn't appear to know what the fuck he's even trying to convey. He's falling down repeatedly. He's having all manner of issues. In the preponderance of it, if some random person begins using CPAP, therefore sleep apnea being relatively common as a diagnosis, it's not necessarily indicative of any larger problem. It could by using CPAP, you're hoping to stave off other problems. When you already have those problems, though, that are linked to why you would use CPAP, that may be a kicker. It may be actually reasonable to ask as well. When did Joe Biden suspect that there was a problem that he was diagnosed with apnea? And where's the doctor's note proclaiming that that's exactly why he's using it? And how long has this been known about? Did the Biden team know months ago that Joe Biden had a problem, and they only announced it now because they have no choice, because quite clearly he had been wearing something strapped across his face for an extended period of time before going out in the morning to talk to the press? We're not sure. This is a very opaque administration with regards not to just medical issues, but basically anything that involves the so-called president of the United States. Under such circumstances, you can understand why people would be a little bit suspicious now, wouldn't you? I have a feeling that he's retaining water, has been using CPAP for some time, and that he's got some sort of other medical issue. That's what I would say is most likely. Again, if he realized, keep this in mind, if he realized that he had indentations across his face from wearing the mask, a person of Joe Biden's particularly egotistical character, and I can read him like a book, wouldn't want to go out in public at all for that. So if he had to and expose that, I would think that he'd been using it already for some time. Maybe wasn't even aware of that because he doesn't have to look in a mirror since he doesn't dress himself, and went out anyway. And that he is retaining water. That is, that his body has absorbed fluid. Maybe they should look into treating him for that. Yes, Joe Hannon, congestive heart failure could be one cause of that. Also, liver damage, kidney failure of some sort. It doesn't have to be end stage, but low function in general. When you get old, you can have vascular and other problems anyway. What this shows to me, looking at this, is that Joe Biden is not the picture of health that he's proposed to be by his handlers, that he's proposed to be by people around him who want him to be reelected. If it is water retention and it's the result of anything non-innocuous, how can you possibly expect him to survive through a second presidential term? And if he's even just using CPAP, again, even using the CPAP, apnea in and of itself existing at all is linked to cognitive decline. At the rate he's already declining, he won't be able to even campaign for the presidency. He might not even end up nominee at some point. I mean, this could be a sign. It doesn't have to be, but it could be a sign of a serious health issue. He's falling down 7 goddamn times since he's been elected, actually technically, or selected, technically more. A couple of them were near falls. He trips over sandbags, he trips up the stairs, et cetera, et cetera. He wanders off, doesn't know where he is half the time, forgets that people have died that he's explicitly talking about while he's giving a goddamn eulogy. What more evidence do we need that there's something health-wise that's not right about Joe? People are pretending if they think that he's healthy. You have to be fucking pretending. Or maybe he was wearing a ball gag or something like that. I'm sure they'd rather people believe he was just wearing the CPAP mask. So something is desperately wrong with the situation here. We're just not 100% sure exactly what it is. We will withhold judgment, and we probably will never be able to judge, but it's quite clear that there's something going on there. Let's see. Nick Kerr says, clank. Cindy Drellick, from a New Hampshire viewpoint, most of us who voted for Trump know what's up. What crowd? Was it huge? Fuck no. Yeah, it was 250, maybe 300 people. Based on the dimensions of the room, which you can, tell obviously from where the stage is, which would be central, and the defined region of the room itself, its size, and the number of people that fit in each quarter of it, you can pretty much guesstimate how many people maximum were there. Mr. Twisted Frenzy, isn't capital punishment cheaper than spending more taxpayer money to keep convicted criminals locked up for the rest of their lives? No, it's actually more expensive. See, the problem is that the way the legal process works, if a person is put on death row, they are afforded appeal after fucking appeal after fucking appeal. I can't remember what the average length of time it is before they die, but it's, I think, close to 20 years. So in many cases, if the person's in their 60s or something, just wait until they die. It doesn't even matter at that point. Just let them suffer in jail. I don't believe the state should be able to execute anyone for any reason. There's always the handful of cases, by the way, a person's on death row and they're later exonerated. And I personally, I would not feel that it's ethical to consign somebody to thinking they're going to die and possibly being executed who genuinely is innocent. The Patriot Cairo, Joey had his ball gag on too long. That's another possibility. He was getting into it with Pelosi's husband there, I suppose. We've got Swamp Donkey 69420. Who needs leftist cancel culture when Breitbart rails against its own side? Pedro Gonzalez issue. If anything, it just further proves the point of small hat people theories. And a follow-up, generally, if he is retaining water, it is often because of heart issues or vascular issues. Yes, exactly. Which ironically make cognitive decline even faster and worse. Yeah, he could, look at the photo. It looks like he's retaining water. I'm assuming that he had an hour to freshen up before he went out to see the press, but it still looks like he barely took the mask off after a good night's nappy. That could be a problem. And I'm not seeing enough people that are so-called journalists discussing that possibility. Sith22, nobody in their right mind thinks Biden is of sound mind. He's literally a puppet for the Marxist-infested swamp machine. True. And Swamp Donkey, Biden was probably wearing a ball gag while getting a train ran on him by Camel Toe Harris and Booty Judge. Possible. I bet Kamala does seem like the kind of person that would be into pegging. And possibly peg docking. Did I just invent that term? Probably not. I'm sure somebody's discovered that possibility before. Jew, hey, Tarl, did you see Nigel Farage has had his bank accounts closed for no reason? It's becoming a trend here. I will probably be looking into and talking about that, but I'm going to need more evidence that his bank accounts were actually closed and that there's a reason for it. Like the bank said, you fucked up, we don't like you, and we closed it or something. Matthew Fox, that's a lot of nuts. That'll be $4, baby. You want fries with that? He just left with nuts. Yes, I will do quotations if paid. Next news story. Flowers pollinated by honeybees make lower quality seeds. Also, it mentions bumblebees, which I put erroneously in the title. I read it wrong in the actual report here. Apparently, the idea is that certain kinds of bees, they spend more time buzzing around on the same flower, so they make more inbred seeds. And that's a big problem in nature and in science. Why do I feel like this is maybe a lead-up story to trying to eradicate bees and replace them with, like, AI drones or something like that? I've already heard people speculate that that's a possibility. Well, we've got colony collapse among bees and other pollinators. I've got a great idea. We'll just make little robot bees and we'll send them out. By the way, you'll pay a subscription if you're a farmer to get your bees, your robotic bees, to hover around on your flowers briefly or something like that. Why do I think that might end up being the dystopia that we're living in? I should probably work that particular comedic foil, dark humor as though it is, into my work on the vegan empire, actually. That's a good idea. Don't fucking forget to remind me. Somebody DM me so I don't forget, since I can't do the tippity type right now in my notepad file. President Irina Vladimirovna Putina Concept I've been thinking on, wanted your input. Make it treason for government entities to lie to the American people. Well, then you wouldn't have a government because, everybody lies. I don't believe in being that draconian. I simply think if we strip 90% of their powers away, the amount of abuse and graft and so forth will necessarily drop considerably. I would call it a day after that. I'm not an anarchist. Testing 2741. Time of day, means of impressions, not CPAP. Not a banned account. Got a white pill about ongoing U.S. corruption. Getting black pilled that more and more evidence of officials doing bad things, but nothing changes. Yeah, everything has been corrupt forever. It doesn't matter the nation or time period. Just look at any ancient society and you'll find plenty of examples. Look at ancient Babylon. They loved keeping records, including about unsavory topics. Rockstar Podcast. I don't want none of that inbred honey. Yeah. Beagle Cake. Ron stands are annoying, be it on YouTube or Twitter. Yeah, I mean, to be clear, some Trump super fans also can be a little bit over the top at times. We're going to be even-handed in our analysis of that one. Speaking of Trump, here's an opinion piece on The Guardian from Robert Reich. He's a far leftoid, severe TDS sufferer. And the title was so goddamn funny to me. I burst out laughing when I first read it. I'm almost laughing now, as you can tell. Here's the title of it. If Trump wins, he'll turn the Justice Department into a vendetta machine. I'm sorry, I have to laugh at that one. Robert Reich is paranoid. What he's worried about is that if Donald Trump wins, he's going to do exactly what Joe Biden is currently doing, weaponizing federal bureaucracy. Well, I mean, you open that can of worms. Donald Trump was continuously obstructed by his own bureaus, elements of Congress, the military, etc. Look at the Syrian envoy story that disappeared so quietly and so quickly, if you don't believe me. Syrian envoy lies about U.S. troop totals in Syria to Donald Trump. We found out about that a year ago. No follow-up by the legacy media, by the way. I have no clue what's happening with the dude. Probably retired very peacefully and is currently snorting cocaine with CIA or Coast Guard assets somewhere in the Caribbean. Anyway, so if Trump wins, I've got to be worried. He's going to use the DOJ to go after his political foes. Well, what the fuck is Joe Biden doing right now? He's doing literally the same goddamn thing. I have a feeling, by the way, based on the IRS whistleblowers, that there is a possibility that this will not just age badly, but age so fucking poorly that he begs the Guardian to scrub the story from basic existence. Thankfully, archives are forever, including the one in the description of this video. That's because you're actually getting, in my opinion, the rudiments of enough evidence to actually potentially go forward and have a legit investigation into Joe Biden. Probably it'll be seen as election interference by the legacy media. Oh my God, the Republicans are investigating him to interfere with the 2024 election by biasing people, thinking that Joe Biden is a criminal or something like that. Of course, in the end, if you had a truly fair investigation, I suspect there's a good chance you'd find criminal wrongdoing by Joe Biden, as well as most members of his family. It seems to be a long tradition in the Biden lineage. Supposedly, his dad was a real progressive dude. But I don't believe that whatsoever. I think that they've always been sort of corporate crooks, and Joe himself was even groomed up into the political persuasion, I think. Robert Reich is, though, here mysteriously worried about what's already going on. See, it's not about what's going on. That's not his concern. It's about who's wielding that state power. Again, another reason to believe in limited government is because it doesn't matter if the person that you agree with is wielding that state power. You might overlook the excess. You might overlook the overreach and the lack of legality behind some of the actions of bureaus or police or whatever. But the second that somebody comes in that you don't agree with, all of a sudden it's a problem. No, it's always a problem. That's the whole point. The very problem itself is the exercising of that power. And so, yeah, Trump will weaponize the DOJ. Yeah, if he can get him to cooperate with him, they're more likely to backstab him like they did before. So Robert Reich is being bullshit. Let's see. Nick Santini. Hey, Stick, been a while. Took your advice and ditched my podunk job for a grocery store job. Currently working up the ladder. Clank on, MAGA 2024. Let's go, Brandon, and let's continue draining the swamp. Good on you. Excellent. You're moving up in the world. Keep climbing that fucking ladder. If anyone else tries to climb ahead of you, kick him in the face. Croc Manar. The Wall Street Journal reports that 80% of YouTube ads violate terms of service, potentially costing Google billions in refunds. If it's from the Wall Street Journal, I'll be skeptical. To be clear, I haven't seen an ad on the internet in years because I use a combination of AdBlock Plus and uBlock, actually. If you use those two, you ain't seeing shit. You also can't use Daily Motion, which, oh, I'm so sad about that. I was actually one of the top creators on the entire platform for a number of years, but it doesn't matter. It literally means nothing, so... Mounted patrolman, are you tracking the Floyd-style riots burning Paris down? The immigrants are throwing real grenades at the police and breached a prison. It appears that the cops there wantonly killed a teenager for very little provocation. I'm not sure that there's a lack of reason why people would be pissed off over there at the moment. It is on TV here. You got to realize that we're not that many hours from Paris. So, next news story. Is the U.S. getting too expensive to live in? Short answer, yes. Many Americans worry about the economy and inflation. Looking at the United States, which I'm not physically in, but most of the people that I contact are Americans, including my family. I try to keep my finger on the pulse of the U.S. economy. And it ain't good expense-wise. Now, there are some exceptions. In some parts of the country, it's easier to make a living. You know, the wages are a bit higher, the rent is a bit lower, et cetera, et cetera. What's America's economic state? Let's read this out. Frustrating and uncertain. The typical American household spends about $768 more on monthly purchasing goods and services compared to 2020 because of high inflation. Mark Zandi, chief economist of Moody's Analytics, said, see, the problem is the average American household is not making that much more per month since 2020. Things were all right under Trump once he stabilized things in the wake of the doldrum-addled Obama era. That we've got 3 years of nonstop good times, which we really need to return to. By the way, don't expect the economic good times to return immediately if Trump is reelected. It'll take him at least a year and probably 2 years just to stabilize the situation. So people will have to learn patience. They won't learn patience. That's why if Trump is reelected, by the end, they'll be bitching about him again. But things were better. Things have not been good since Joe Biden's stewardship began. We have a significant amount of additional credit card debt, which is going to weigh people down longer and for a longer period of time. We have massive inflation. Yeah, it's lower month over month. Congratulations. It's a year over year metric, so that literally means absolutely nothing. And people are hurting. And that's just the truth. So I just wanted to mention that. The article asks a question. I can answer it in one word. Yeah. Yeah, the U.S. is getting too expensive to live in, partially because of Bidenomics. Not a bad account. How safe is President Biden from DOJ weaponization? 100% safe. He never has to worry about that. Even if Joe Biden were to get in and purge the people running the DOJ, he would be obstructed by outside groups anyway. He's not going to weaponize bullshit if he's reelected. What he's going to do is do the things that actually work. We understand Trump's pragmatism, by the way, because of one great example from early on in his presidency. Donald Trump initially planned to broker a peace deal between Israel and Palestine. And he went in, and Kushner went in too, which, you know, in retrospect wasn't the greatest idea, but he did seem to have decent relations with the Israelis, so whatever, for several months. And he tried to broker peace accords there. The peace might have broken out in the Levant region. Oh my God, it'd be terrible. John Bolton would have hanged himself. And he failed. Donald Trump failed to secure anything other than the Abraham Accords and a few other things, moving the embassy. It helped for a while, but it wasn't the prize he wanted. What did he do? Almost immediately, like within a month, he was talking to Kim Jong-un. And then peace broke out on the Korean Peninsula. He was largely successful at the rapprochement deals that he brokered, and later on that the ROK and DPRK brokered on their own with the United States' help and urging. It worked. He immediately pivoted when he realized that he couldn't get that accomplished. He said, I'm done wasting my time on this failed adventure, so I'm moving to the next one, and I'll see if I can succeed at that. He was willing to accept silver, but he got it in the end. It's better to take second place than to make yourself a disgrace and not win anything now, isn't it? Well, he was up there smiling on the podium, shaking Kim Jong-un's hand and stepping briefly into North Korea itself, the first U.S. president to do so. Based on that, I think that Donald Trump is much more pragmatic than some people think. And that was, it was a good time. I fondly remember those years under Trump prior to the China virus breaking out. I fondly remember that 3-year period where there were so many fewer things going goddamn wrong in the world than they are currently or had been before. My hope is that we'll get those good old days back again for another 4 years, and hopefully some dynastic post-presidency that rises up, maybe Rand Paul. It certainly won't be DeSantis at this point. And then the final news story, more about devious Don. Donald Trump sues Jean Carroll for defamation. Yes, because Jean Carroll really fucked up. You see, she won a case against Donald Trump in a civil matter, stating that in which the jury found that Donald Trump had sexually abused her and defamed her. It was also found that there wasn't enough evidence to say that he raped her. Now, this is a binding civil decision. The jury found there was not evidence that Donald Trump raped Jean Carroll. They're unable legally to say that he did so. What did Jean Carroll come out and say? Not long ago on CNN. Oh, Donald Trump did rape me. I will read this. In a counterclaim filed Tuesday night, Trump alleges that Carroll defamed him when she appeared on CNN the morning after the jury awarded her $5 million in damages. Carroll was asked about the verdict, finding Trump sexually abused Carroll, but did not rape her, as she alleged. Carroll said, oh, yes, he did. Well, the jury found that you didn't. Now, here's the thing. Orange Man bad. He's not going to get a penny from it. They'll end up throwing the case out as meritless because this is a weaponized court proceeding. The counterclaim countering her original claim is automatically prejudiced against simply because it's ex post facto. And so it will fall through. Donald Trump is not going to prevail in the case. But he should, because she literally defamed him. She's countermanding what the jury literally already found on legal record. But it's Donald Trump. So I wouldn't expect anything to come of this. Jean Carroll's people will brush it aside without too much trouble with the weaponized court there. Not a band account. Chances that Trump finally spends time in jail, very low. Again, even if he is convicted of one or more of the charges that he's been spuriously called forth on, jailing a former president is a difficult act. Hasn't been done before, you see. That's because former presidents have a 24/7 security detail from the Secret Service. It's also difficult when they happen to be the front runner within the GOP and likely by that time would already have been nominated. Jailing a presidential nominee would take us to the very brink of not just in name only oligarchy, but literal oligarchy. A lot of people would be very uncomfortable with that. I have a feeling that it would be much more than half the population, including some Democrats. They would see it as wrong. They'd say, look, they nominated Orange Man. You can defeat him in a fair fight and drop the fucking bullshit. But some of it's state level. The problem is that even if Joe Biden were to come out like Geraldo style, as he suggested, pardon Donald Trump for his sins, that's fine. There are still state level charges that are going forward. Well, that's a little bit different from something that's under Biden's purview. And who's to say that Trump wouldn't flip him the bird and say, fuck your pardon. Go ahead and interfere in the election in the most dramatic sense since the Civil War era, at least arguably in the history of our country. Go see what fucking happens. They're basically trying to reelect Donald Trump at this point through their behavior because it's so goddamn off kilter. And because he doesn't really face any challenges at this point in the nomination process. Of course, DeSantis, I got to tell you again, as somebody who months ago said I wanted to see DeSantis eventually rise to the presidency, he's made so many goddamn mistakes over the last few months. It's difficult to see how he has a political future at this point. I think that he's going to go John Kasich mode. I think basically popular governor, stacked up well against the political opponent due to being less well known than his primary challengers. John Kasich is back in 2016, used the exact same premise to promote himself that DeSantis is using now. Well, I stack up better against Hillary Clinton, said John Kasich. Well, I stack up better against Biden, says DeSantis, although that depends on the polling period and it depends on the poll and in the state and the time period at the same time. Kasich had a more legit claim, by the way, when he was running for office. Why did he stack up better? Because if you don't know who he is, it's basically Hillary Clinton, who nobody likes, versus generic Republican. Well, if you don't know anything about him and he's got none of that baggage, then it's not a problem. DeSantis does come with baggage, but he is simply less well known than Trump. I dub it the Kasich effect. That's exactly what you're seeing now in the matchup polling in certain swing states, like we got Wisconsin and Iowa the other day, it's not going to work. He's going to end up John Kasich 2.0. He'll continue to occasionally get consulted by the media. Maybe he'll get a consulting job. I think he's even burning the bridge on being politically viable in his home state, which is sad because he could have done a lot better than that. Anyway, it's time for me to go offline. I will be live tomorrow. However, we do have a visitor coming, so it might be a little earlier or later. I'm not 100% sure. And I hope that you enjoyed the show. Again, link in the description, cross-platform, and pinned at the top on YouTube if you're watching there. You can still bid on those stickmen. You can see one right here, of course. They come with a notarized certificate of authenticity, and at least one of them has cycled back through and been relisted due to non-payment on the bid. So that one starts back off at its original 99 cents. That's about all. Peace out.